Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Sorry for the little delay there. Had a few technical difficulties working on. Got them resolved right now. But we got a great show. It is Thursday. I am wearing my Red Sox hat, winners of 7 straight, and in a pretty good spot. Not as good as the Dodgers spot in the NL wildcard at this moment. But the Red Sox are 2 games up on the New York Yankees for that first place spot in the wildcard game. So Red Sox are playing well. I'm feeling good. Cowboys are playing well. I'm feeling good about that too. A little discouraged about my Warriors. I'll get into that in just a second with the Ben Simmons story. But I'm going to start the show talking about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers win over the Lions, and some comments that Aaron made after the game really had me puzzled. Also, Justin Fields is going to start his first NFL game on Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. I'll tell you why the Andy Dalton is not getting his job back. That is all coming up next in the show, as well as the taunting penalties going on in the NFL and my prediction for tonight's game between the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans. So let's start with that game Monday night. Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers. I picked a 20-point Green Bay win. They won by 18, so fairly close. And so if you're a Packers fan, I don't really know how you should feel today other than we did what we were supposed to do. Green Bay's a better team than Detroit. Yeah, and the sky's blue. I mean, it's not exactly a revelation. We didn't figure out anything about Aaron Rodgers or anybody who plays for the Packers or Matt LaFleur for that matter. We didn't really figure out anything that we didn't know before. Aaron played great. The other Aaron Jones, the running back, 4 touchdowns in the game. He played outstanding. Yeah, he's really good. He's a top 10 back in the league. And Detroit looked like a 2-win team. Okay, I know they played well in the first half, and then they got completely over their head in the second half. And Green Bay just completely dominated them from start to finish in the second half, and Detroit didn't score a point. By the way, Jared Goff, without Sean McVay, is now 0-9. So you throw that out there. So Aaron makes some comments after the game. And he figured he'd come in and compliment teammates, talk about good performance, primetime stage, right? Monday Night Football. But no, Aaron Rodgers comes in and he's talking about the doubters. He's talking about how people didn't think we could do it. He said, quote, I think people like to come in and say a lot of BS. So it was good to come in and have a good performance. Aaron, you beat Detroit. I can't emphasize that enough. That's a bad football team over there. Green Bay is not. And so Aaron's going to be controlling the narrative this season. And listen, I defended him like crazy during the offseason, and especially on draft day when he announced, I'm not happy I went out of Green Bay. Ultimately, he, of course, as we all know, came back the first day of training camp, but had about as honest a press conference as an athlete has ever had. Heck, that a celebrity has ever had. I mean, he just came out and just spilled the beans on what's going on and what has been going on. I sided with him. But that was under the assumption that he's going to come back and be Aaron Rodgers. Well, yeah, I mean, last week he lost by 5 touchdowns and scored 3 points and barely threw for 100 yards. This week they beat Detroit. Not exactly impressed. This is a 10-7 football team. As I said before the season started, the Packers are going to be 10-7. They're going to win a weak NFC North. People whack on the NFC East. Dallas is good. Okay, Giants are no pushover. Washington, we all know about their defense. All of a sudden, Philly doesn't look bad. NFC East is absolutely a better division than the NFC North. I could argue the NFC East is a better division also than the AFC South. I mean, nobody in the AFC South do we think is a Super Bowl contender. No, nobody. Even the team I think is going to win the division, the Colts, they're 0-2. The Titans are Derrick Henry or bust, and they got a bad defense. Right? Houston's terrible. Jacksonville's terrible. But that's another conversation for another day. The point is, the Packers are going to win the NFC North. Why? The Lions are garbage. The Vikings are going to move on from Kirk Cousins after this season. And the Bears, while I like the decision they made, which we'll talk about later in the show, this is not a team that's going to make the playoffs in a loaded NFC. It's wide open for the Packers. I'll even kind of shrug if they win the division. Yeah, okay, you've done that the last 2 years. You should win the NFC North. I don't even know how many times Aaron's won the NFC North. He's done it a million times. But can he come out in the playoffs and actually show up? I mean, since that long ago Super Bowl 45 in Dallas, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers has a losing playoff record, 7-8. And some of those playoff wins have come against Joe Webb, who later in his career converted from a quarterback to receiver, a rookie, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins. These aren't exactly like staggering wins. He's had a lot of blowout playoff losses as well. And so I'm sorry, cheeseheads, but I didn't see anything that made me say, oh, wow, okay, yeah, Green Bay's for real. That was just a fluke that will happen in week 1. No, it's not a fluke. You know why? Because every time the Packers play a physical team, they get it handed to them every single time, at least in the Matt LaFleur era. Go back to 2019. Okay, they lost to an Eagles team that was very much a hit you in the mouth team. They ran the football well, and they got beat at home. They lost to a Chargers team that won like 4 games in 2019. They were terrible. But it was a physical defense. They lost. And twice against the 49ers in week 12 of that year and the NFC Championship game, the game was over at halftime. And Aaron was terrible. Okay, a year later, Aaron Rodgers wins the MVP. But they get smacked by Tampa Bay, a very physical team, and they get beat on their home field, Lambeau, against a warm weather team, by the way. They get beat and outplayed the entire game by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're going to play a physical team in the 49ers this weekend. San Francisco's actually healthy this time around, unlike last year. Okay, right now, and I'm going to do my picks for Sunday tomorrow, but I'm favoring Green Bay. I'm favoring San Francisco. Okay, there's nothing about the Packers right now that I can say that's a Super Bowl contender. Do they look like one? Tampa Bay does. Rams do. There's a lot of teams out, Kansas City, for the most part, does. Baltimore does. All these teams I mentioned have had performances that you were like, whoa. Okay, that team's going to be around well into January. You're lying to yourself if you think the Packers are going to be one of those teams. Will Aaron Rodgers retire? Heck, I don't know. He told Aaron Andrews that he very much considered it. Will he leave? Maybe. But there's nothing right now about the Packers that could convince me, yeah, that team's going places. It looked like a team that's in a bad division who's going to win it simply because they have an unbelievable quarterback. And they'll be out in the first round because we know they're going to play the Packers without a question right now. It is not even debatable. If they get into the playoffs, as I predicted before the season, they'll be the 4th seed, meaning they'll be the last divisional winner in. Tampa Bay's better than them. Nobody's arguing that. Everybody knows that. The Rams are better than them. I don't think anybody argues that either. In my view, the Cowboys are better than them. I'm starting to think Dak is a little better than Aaron. They've got a better offensive line, better running game, better receivers, better defense. Only debate is coach. But that's fairly close. I mean, it's a debate. The Cowboys are better across the board. So what's that going to mean for the Packers? Well, as the 4th seed, that means they're going to end up playing the first wild card team, which will more likely than not come from the best division in football, the NFC West. Whether it's Seattle, San Francisco, Arizona, Packers going out in the first round. Like, this is not This is not a championship football team by any stretch. They had a cakewalk schedule last season. The physical teams they faced, it didn't go so well. And now this year, they got a lot of physical teams in their schedule this year, by the way. They got Pittsburgh, San Francisco this weekend. So that's just the reality of it. Not a championship team. Okay, let's talk about Ben Simmons. Seems like I talk about him like every week now. And his current situation with the 76ers. So Ben Simmons has, according to Shams Charania of The Athletic, I believe, Ben Simmons has notified the Philadelphia 76ers that he will not show up to training camp. And before I continue that, I've got a comment here from my man John Rivera, Fan Perspective Podcast. They will find a way to win a road playoff game. I don't think they'll be on the road in the playoffs. I think they'll be at home. They'll win the division. They'll be at Lambeau. But you cannot tell me that they are better than any of the teams, any of the 4 teams in the NFC West. There's no question the Rams are better. I think Seattle's better simply because I trust the quarterback more. Okay, you've got the 49ers who last time they played Green Bay in the playoffs absolutely clobbered them. In Arizona, Kyler Murray's looking like an MVP candidate just like he was last year. So, listen, Aaron's going to have a great year. I resign the fact Aaron's going to have a great year because he is one of, in my view, the 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time. And it might be the greatest Packers quarterback of all time. I like Aaron a lot more than I do Brett Favre. But this is, there's nothing that pops about the Packers, even with still another 15 games to go. But we can obviously continue this discussion tomorrow and probably will tomorrow because I'm going to predict Packers 49ers along with the other 14 Sunday NFL games. So back to Ben Simmons. Now, Ben Simmons has basically requested a trade. He has said he'll play for any of the organizations in the NBA except for the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, some really good news for me as a Warriors fan is that Joe Lacob was asked about Ben Simmons and just completely wrote that off. He basically said, point blank, don't think he's a really good fit with what we got with Draymond. And people, I heard Kendrick Perkins the other, and I respect Perk. Perk's really, really good at his job at ESPN, former NBA player. But he was saying Ben Simmons is Draymond Green, but just more athletic. Well, look, I mean, Usain Bolt's more athletic than Tom Brady. That doesn't mean Usain Bolt would be a great quarterback, right? Athleticism isn't the only thing that wins. I mean, Russell Westbrook is probably still the most athletic player in the league, arguably. I mean, you could throw John Morant and other guys out there, but Russ is still up there, even at his age. Steph's clearly better. Kyrie's clearly better. Dame's clearly better. So athleticism isn't the only thing. And plus, there's not anybody that knows basketball out there that would trust Ben Simmons more than Draymond Green in a big game. I mean, name Ben Simmons' signature playoff moment. It doesn't exist. Draymond, on the other hand, his biggest playoff game, it actually came in a loss, unfortunately, Game 7, that unbelievable game against Cleveland in the 2016 finals. Draymond dropped 32, 9, and 14 and hit 6 threes. 6 or 7 threes. Okay, he hits big shots when it matters. If you need a triple-double from Draymond, he'll give it to you. He's really more of the point guard than Steph is, really. I mean, he's the guy who facilitates the offense. Steph just makes magic happen. But Draymond is a facilitator. Ben Simmons will not fit. By the way, at the very least, if Draymond is just wide open and is about to take a shot, there's at least the thought in the back of opposing players' minds, this shot may go in. It may go in. Ben Simmons, look how dude's playing. They back up 20 feet, it seems like. I mean, they're just like, fine. Shoot. If you want to shoot, great. If you want to drive it, great. Whatever. But you are limited. You are a limited basketball player. I've said as a frequent commenter on this show, and a good friend of mine, Grady Edwards, he told me, in June, I guess it was, and I've used it and given him credit for it ever since, that Ben Simmons is the Jay Cutler of the NBA. Ridiculously great talent, but does not have the drive or that fire to be great. It isn't the best teammate in the world. That perfectly sums up Ben Simmons. And so, yay for Joe Lacob. Yay for Joe Lacob, the owner of the Warriors, who, by the way, got fined $50,000 by the NBA for tampering for his comments. I love Adam Silver. He's the best commissioner in sports, but, man, I hate these tampering rules. They're kind of ridiculous. But the point is that Golden State does not want Ben Simmons. And I think now, when other teams are looking at Philly's completely lost all leverage. They've completely lost all leverage, and it's 100% their fault. It is their fault they lost all leverage, not necessarily just Ben Simmons. Because Doc Rivers, play the clip after we've got the clip after the Game 7 loss to Atlanta, in which Ben Simmons, in that game infamously passed up a wide open dunk over little 5'11", 6-foot Trae Young, instead passed it to Matisse Thybulle, who made one of 2 free throws, and Joel Embiid went on to say that was the turning point in the game. So Joel Embiid took a shot at Ben Simmons, and this is what Doc Rivers said after the game when asked this question about Ben Simmons.
Doc, do you think Ben Simmons can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become?
Yeah, David, I don't know that question or the answer to that right now. So I don't know the answer to that.
That's it. That was the end right there. That Doc Rivers, listen, a lot of guys will get criticized. A lot of players will get criticized after games, and the coaches will rush to their defense, or teammates will rush to their defense saying, he's a great guy, he works hard. You hear this saying in sports sometimes, I go to war with that guy. I'd do anything for him. He's my brother. You didn't hear that for Ben Simmons. You didn't hear that. Okay. And so now the Sixers are the ones making the calls, not other teams. They're making the calls to Sacramento or Portland. Heck, I even read the other day that they had a discussion with the Brooklyn Nets for Kyrie Irving, but Kyrie actually threatened to retire if he got traded to Philly, which I'm like, wouldn't be the worst destination for Kyrie. I think it'd make Philly better, although then again, Kyrie, he's had trouble staying healthy, and you have no clue where his mind is at sometimes. So, that'd have been interesting, and I think it'd have been a horrible trade for the Nets. But anyways, like I said a month ago, what contender takes Ben Simmons? Like, we think about the contending teams in the NBA. Let's start out East. Okay, they already had their discussions with the Nets. No chance that happens. Milwaukee's not going to make a deal for him, right? I don't think Atlanta's a contender. They did get to the Eastern Conference Finals, but I heard that they had discussed some stuff with Atlanta. And I was like, why on earth would the Hawks make a deal with the 76ers for Ben Simmons? Because they saw firsthand, right along with the Sixers, about the disaster this guy can be in big games. They saw this guy get outplayed badly by Seth Curry, and I love Seth Curry, and he's the brother of, my favorite NBA player, but Seth Curry should not be outplaying, or significantly for that matter, outplaying Ben Simmons in a playoff series where they got to bench Simmons in the last 2 minutes. That's why Doc Rivers said what he said. You know who has leverage by who's making the call, not by who's taking it. And that's the position that Philadelphia is in right now. That's the position that one of the best general managers in the game, Daryl Morey, that's where he's at. I mean, do you think if they call Portland, because you've heard of the contending teams that Philadelphia has been the number one trade destination for Damian Lillard, should he get traded in the coming months or coming weeks possibly? Do you think Portland will give up, in my opinion, the greatest player in the history of their franchise for Ben Simmons, Matisse Thybulle, and Danny Green and some draft picks? I don't know. I mean, I think they want to get a little bit. They might give up C.J. McCollum maybe for Ben Simmons. I mean, like I said, who's calling? The only trade scenario that makes sense to me is Ben Simmons to Sacramento for De'Aaron Fox. I like De'Aaron Fox a lot. He's improved his game year in and year out, unlike Ben Simmons, and I think he'd fit pretty well with Joel Embiid. He's a good teammate, good dude, works hard. I think it's somebody they could plug in, and you don't have to bench him in the last 2 minutes of a big playoff game. You don't have to worry about that. He can knock down the three. He's athletic. He's quick. That's kind of, that one kind of works. But as far as the contending teams, let's look out in the Western Conference. Lakers aren't making a deal for Simmons. I'm not big on the Lakers at all this season. I don't think they get past the second round. But they're not going to make a deal for Ben Simmons. The Clippers without Kawhi Leonard were 2 wins away from the NBA Finals. Who are they going to trade? Paul George? They're not trading Paul George for that guy. No way. Paul George earned his nickname Playoff P last year while Ben Simmons was home. Okay? They're not going to do that. Golden State, that's, thank God, out the window. Thanks to Joe Lacob, the owner. Denver, I like Denver a lot this year. They've got a really good core three. Jokic just won the MVP. Jamal Murray's going to be back from injury. We saw what he did last year in the playoffs in 2020. He was unbelievable. He was dropping 50-point games every third game. Michael Porter Jr., guy who a lot of people thought was going to be the number 1 pick in 2018 before he had back injuries. You see how he's getting better and better and how he stepped up when Jamal Murray went down. They've got something in Denver, and they've got a really good coach, Mike Malone, as well. They're deep. That's a good team. They're not going to make that deal. They're not. Maybe they deal Porter, but I don't even see that. I think they really like this kid. Utah, I mean, do they give up Gobert? I mean, I'm not a huge Rudy Gobert fan, but you lose your rim protector. I mean, I've said on the show for like a year or so, I think they need to trade Gobert and get Donovan Mitchell, a second legit star player, to team up with him. Because no free agent is going to Utah. But that's not who you deal Gobert for. Phoenix is going to try and run it back. They're not going to trade CP3 or Booker or Ayton. So the bottom line is, I don't know where Philly goes from here. I think he's going to get traded. Will he play any games? We'll see. But even last year, when James Harden didn't, in my opinion, handle that situation well at all. I mean, he's out of shape. He comes to games oversized is the word I'll use. He didn't exactly look like, like LeBron or anything coming into a season. And team still called Houston. Why? It's James Harden. I mean, I've criticized him on numerous occasions about his playoff performances, but that's still James Harden. Like, you take, I mean, that's a top 15 player, top 10 player in the NBA. He's a multiple-time scoring champion. He's the MVP. You make a deal for James Harden if you get the shot. And Brooklyn took that shot, and they got a big 3 now. Like, Ben is not in that level. He's nowhere near MVP level like James Harden is. Sixers have lost all leverage, man. I don't know where they go from here. Let's talk a little bit about Justin Fields. Justin Fields has officially been named by Matt Nagy, head coach of the Bears, as the starting quarterback for the Bears for Sunday afternoon's game against the Cleveland Browns. So, first of all, good for Justin Fields. I've been saying for a month that he needs to be the starter in Chicago. With all due respect to Andy Dalton, good guy, decent quarterback, not great. He's fine. He's a good quarterback. There's a spot for Andy Dalton in the NFL. But as I talked about during the preseason, there was a report from Chicago. They had a joint practice with the Miami Dolphins. And Justin Fields was the only player of everybody for either squad. And those are, Miami's a good team. And the Bears got some good players. Justin Fields was the only guy who got oohs and ahs from the crowd in Chicago. This team, this city, has been starving for a franchise quarterback. Even the 2 Super Bowl appearances. Jim McMahon, more famous for the headband than what he actually did on the field. And then was it Rex Grossman, I think it was, when they made their second Super Bowl when they lost to Peyton Manning's Colts? This isn't not exactly Hall of Famers there that the Bears have had even when they got into the Super Bowl. So they're like, look, offensive line needs work. We can address that in the offseason, but we've got a decent receiving core. Allen Robinson's one of the most underrated players, not just receivers, but players in the whole NFL. Our defense is still pretty good, right? Khalil Mack's still a monster. Akeem Hicks in the middle. Robert Quinn from the other side. Matt Nagy's a good coach. He's gotten Mitchell Trubisky to the playoffs twice in 3 years. I don't know why he's on the hot seat. We've just made bad decisions as a franchise. We, as in the front office in Chicago, in looking for a franchise quarterback. They drafted Mitchell Trubisky second overall over Deshaun Watson, which, of course, there's a lot of issues with him right now, but even still, that looks like a pretty stupid decision. And even worse, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. Sorry, Bears fans. I hate that you had to relive that one. But you found your guy. Everybody likes Justin Fields. A lot of people thought he was a lock to be the second overall pick behind Trevor Lawrence in this past NFL draft. But for whatever reason, I guess he forgot to play football or something. I don't know. Wasn't a character issue. He slid down to 11 and the Bears traded up and took him. It was a great decision. And so, good for Justin Fields. And as for the Bears, as for Matt Nagy, he's now in a tough position. But there's a way to get out of it. There's one way to get out of it. The tough position for him is that Justin Fields, keep in mind, I'm not predicting a winner until tomorrow between the Browns and the Bears, but Cleveland's defense is good. It's not the Rams' defense or Tampa Bay's defense. Or Washington's defense. It's good. It's got some good. Myles Garrett's a beast. I predicted Myles Garrett to be Defensive Player of the Year, and they've got solid players, but they're not any what you call an elite defense, like a championship defense. You're at home. Justin Fields is going to play well because something else, unlike Andy Dalton, when the pocket breaks down with that bad Bears offensive line, Justin Fields can move outside the pocket, make plays. He can run, or he can make throws on the run if he has to. Andy Dalton can't do that. He's not as mobile. And so the tough position is Justin Fields is who Bears fans have been beating the table to start. Well, they finally got their wish. Do you think if Fields goes out there, I'm not saying he's going to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns or something, but if he goes out there and plays pretty well, well enough for the Bears to have a chance to win the game, do you think it'll go over too well if Andy Dalton is inserted back into the QB1 spot? That would probably all but seal Matt Nagy's fate with the Bears. Because the only reason Justin Fields is starting is because Andy Dalton's hurt this week. That's the only reason that Matt Nagy's making the decision. John Rivera says, do you think they have a shot at winning the division? I don't think so, even with Fields. But my thing about getting him in is A, get him the experience, and B, for Matt Nagy, it saves his job if he keeps him there. And that was the point I was about to make, is that if Matt Nagy next week, if Fields plays well, win or lose, says he's our quarterback for the rest of the season, now all of a sudden he's given himself a shot to keep the job as the head coach. Because if Matt Nagy gets fired by the Bears, regardless, he's getting hired somewhere else. He's an excellent, excellent head coach. I already told you, he got Mitchell Trubisky to the playoffs twice in 3 years. That's some kind of coach. That's pretty good. So if Fields goes out there against the Browns and balls out, and they insert Andy Dalton back in, Matt Nagy's gone. He is out of there. Ryan Pace, who I'm not as big of a fan of as the GM of the team, he is out of there. Goodbye. So that's kind of where I'm looking at right now. Very interesting situation. I think the Bears absolutely made the right decision. So we shall see. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch it. I can't wait to watch this game on Sunday. We all know how Cleveland's a great team with a quarterback I don't trust. Chicago's not a great team with a quarterback that I think pretty soon in the next year or two is going to be one of the upper tier quarterbacks in the NFL. So it should be very, very, very interesting. I was already pretty interested in this game, but that just went up that much. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun game. Okay. I put it off a little bit. I think I briefly discussed this topic in the preseason. I tried to put it off, but I can't anymore. It's too obvious. It's too much of a story right now. It's very controversial, and that's the NFL taunting penalties. So during the offseason, I don't know why. I don't know who suggested that this be a priority, but the NFL decided to put an emphasis on taunting. Now, the tough thing about taunting is, unlike pass interference or holding or false starts or anything of that nature or roughing the passer, they're kind of subjective. I mean, you could say other calls are subjective, but it is literally based off of your opinion, the referee's opinion, as to whether this individual player did something you thought was unsportsmanlike. So I've got about a minute compilation here. If for the podcast audience, I'm sorry, for the live audience, here you go. I'm going to kind of talk over this, narrate this, if you will. Here's the first one. It's Texans-Browns. Tight end makes the catch, spins the ball, and he gets a taunting call. Okay, this is from the Cowboys-Chargers game. Here's Justin Herbert. He throws a little dump-off pass to Keenan Allen. I watched this live. Keenan Allen gets up in the Cowboys player's face. They're trash-talking, and Keenan Allen gets a flag. Okay, here's Titans-Seahawks. 2 makes a good play, flexes on the guy, celebrates, and he gets a taunting penalty. This pass is incomplete here. Dolphins-Bills. It's a good play by the corner. He gives the incomplete sign, flexes, and he gets a taunting call. And here's, just talked about the Bears. You got the Bears and the Bengals. Andy Dalton gets trash talked by a cornerback who comes in on the blitz, and he gets a taunting call. And then finally, Falcons-Bucks. It's a pick 6. The Edwards guy turns around, talks junk to Matt Ryan as he's walking into the end zone for a pick 6, and he gets a taunting penalty. So, as you can see, some pretty, John says, terrible. Yes, it was horrible. So here's my issue, and I have always said this on this show. While I've listened, you can believe 2 things at once. It's not being a hypocrite, because, I've said it's all about Aaron Rodgers early in the show. I don't care if you talk about how great you are, if you can back it up. If Tom Brady said I'm the greatest quarterback ever, I'm like, yeah, he is. If LeBron, I remember a few years ago when LeBron said, when we came back from 3-1 down against Golden State in 2016, that one may be the greatest player of all time. I disagree with it, but this isn't like Brooke Lopez saying he's the greatest player of all time. It's LeBron James we're talking about. Now I think Jordan's the GOAT, but there's at least an argument. as to who it is between Michael and LeBron. If you can back it up, I got no problem if you talk. None. Now, if you can't back it up, that's where there's issues, and that's where I'm going to criticize you on the show, and I have many times for many people. But in this instance, someone makes a play. Someone overpowers you. Somebody gets the best of you on a specific play. You can celebrate. You've got every right to let the other guy know, yeah, I was better than you right here. Or let them know that, hey, better luck next time, but I'm going to talk my junk right now. You got that right. You were better than them. And even the one, I can't get to the clip now, but the Andy Dalton play with the Bengals defensive back that comes in on the blitz. All the defensive back is doing is just talking smack to Andy Dalton, and he gets a flag. He's not making any gestures, nothing. Nothing. And then when they get two guys in each other's face and there's taunting, listen. I was watching Colin Cowherd's show the other day, and I thought his co-host, Joy Taylor, made an excellent point. She said, instead of punishing guys for taunting, suspend guys for fighting. If there's ever a fight, just put more of an emphasis on fighting than taunting. Taunting's not an issue. Nobody cares if there's a taunting call. And when it happens on the field, hardly anybody in the stadium notices unless it's like on the Jumbotron or something. But outside of that, fans don't care. It's ridiculous. It's bogus. As Cam Newton said during his MVP campaign in 2015, Panthers were playing the Titans. They're beating them pretty bad. And late in the game, Cam scores like a 1 or 2 yard touchdown, little quarterback power right. Cam gets in the end zone. He does one of his dances. And a Titans linebacker comes in and he objects to what Cam is doing in his home end zone. All right, so he kind of gets up in Cam's face. There's a little bit of a scuffle between Carolina and Tennessee players. And they asked Cam Newton about that after the game. He said, if you don't like it, don't let me score. It's that simple. If you don't like it, don't give them a reason to celebrate. Otherwise, zip it. They've got every right. And for the, I heard John Mara, the owner of the New York Giants, a few weeks ago talked about it's just not something we want in the game, is taunting. Listen, just like basically every other entertainment business in America, the business is driven by who? The fans. Politics in America, it's driven mostly by who? The people. The masses, right, are the ones who decides these different things. Fans were not complaining about taunting during the offseason. I mean, what shocked me maybe even more than the new rules that the NFL implemented, what shocked me is that they were even talking about this. Like, this wasn't an issue. I feel like the NFL kind of turned a corner a few years ago when Roger Goodell and the league as a whole let players celebrate more on touchdowns. And what did it do? It gave the NFL more of a social media presence. This is what I've always criticized about Major League Baseball, is because they don't let the players show their personality enough. The talent in baseball is probably greater than it's ever been. Major League Baseball is crazy right now. You get all kinds of contenders. You got so many great players and great pitchers and hitters. I mean, like the end of that White Sox-Yankees Field of Dreams game. That was awesome. The whole game was awesome. Ninth inning was nuts. Just like a campaign baseball had a few years ago, let the kids play. If you're the NFL, let the kids play. It's a game. Above all else, it is a game. Plain and simple. So I don't even know why this is even a discussion. Grady Edwards says, even Steve Johnson and Plaxico Burress celebrations. Grady, I'm not aware of that particular celebration. I probably should be. But I think I remember a few of Plaxico Burress' celebrations. They were a little crazy. Now, like, for example, Odell. And Grady just used the example, the Randy Moss mooning incident he's referring to in Green Bay. Randy Moss catches a touchdown and doesn't literally do it, but imitates as if he is mooning the crowd. Or Odell Beckham Jr. a few years ago scored a touchdown against the Eagles and acted like he was peeing in the end zone. That's over the top. Okay. That deserves a flag. That's kind of ridiculous. That's not celebrating. I don't know what that is. It's not celebrating though. It's kind of attention hogging more than anything, but just talking smack to somebody else or flexing or doing the incomplete sign or getting it up in another guy's face and talking about it. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. Like I said, it is a game. It is meant to be played for fun. So, Grady, like I said, the celebrations that are just like, okay, that's over the top. Like, taking a dump in the end zone, right? Or mooning the fans, that's a little much. But if it's not, like if it's something directed at the fans, if it is actually like literally disrespectful to the fans, okay, it should be flagged. Or something we could consider disrespectful to the opponent, okay. But listen, you made a great play, or you're just in the rhythm of the game. Listen, football's hard. It's a physical game. I once heard somebody say, and it made me think about football in a whole new light because it's true. It was a guy, I was playing basketball one day, and something came up about basketball and football, and something came up, football being a contact sport. He said, no. Basketball is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It is. That's exactly right. It's a hard game. It's a 60-minute slugfest for 3 hours. Let the guys have a little bit of fun out there. Come on. If it's over the top, I get it, but let the kids play. Just let them play. Don't worry about what a few curmudgeons say, okay? Don't let them drive your product because it won't end well. It won't end well. All right. Last topic of the show today. Got a Thursday night football matchup between the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans. Carolina is 2-0. They beat the New York Jets and the New Orleans Saints at home. Sam Darnold looks really good. That Carolina Panthers defensive line, which was not good at all last season, all of a sudden, folks, they're leading the NFL in sacks, the whole league. So that defense has turned around. That was, in large part, one of their biggest, not turnarounds, one of their biggest bugaboos. And Matt Rule, the Panthers front office, they addressed it in the draft. Last year, 2020, they spent every single draft pick on a defensive player. They made it an emphasis, a lot like Dallas did this year. Dallas, not every player Dallas took was a defensive player, but there was clearly an emphasis on the weakness of the team. That was defense. That was pass rush, and the Panthers have done an excellent job of addressing that. And I said before the season, I like the direction this team is in this franchise is going. I still don't think win or lose tonight, they're a playoff team because of how tough that NFC is. But next year, sure, why not? It's funny. It's funny when Sam Darnold isn't a New York Jet. As I've always said on the show, the New York Jets, where quarterbacks' dreams go to die. They just screw up so many quarterback careers. A Jets fan in here, John Rivera. Let's go Yankees. Get out of here, John. Stop it. Jeez. No, we're good. I just hate the Yankees. But on the other hand, you got the Houston Texans, who, while they're 1-1, are going in a completely different direction. You got the Deshaun Watson situation, which we have no clue how that's going to end up. Their starting quarterback going in, Tyrod Taylor, is hurt again. And so tonight, they're going to have to turn to a poor rookie second rounder out of Stanford, kid by the name of Davis Mills. Guy who I actually kind of liked out of college. I actually said on the record I liked him more than Mac Jones. If you switch Mac Jones, Davis Mills, New England, Houston, I think Davis Mills would be more successful than Mac Jones. He wasn't better in college than Mac, but he's more NFL ready than Mac Jones is. No question about it. But problem is, Houston's a pretty bad football team. Bad defense, bad offensive line, average receiving core. Their coach, David Culley, he's fine. but there's only so much he can do with a limited roster, which this is. And so with that said, Thursday Night Football tonight, the line, by the way, is Carolina. Carolina's on the road, by the way, and they're still favorites -8, according to Vegas. And so with that said, I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers to win 34-14, a comfortable win. I accidentally had Carolina as a home team on this. I apologize for that. Houston is the home team, but Carolina will win tonight, go to 3-0. The 3-0 Carolina Panthers. That is something we haven't said, I don't think, since they made the Super Bowl in 2015. Now, that's unrealistic this year, but again, they're certainly going in the right direction, so I'll take the Panthers to win 34-14, go to 3-0. Houston will drop to 1-2. So that's my first pick of week 3. It's just crazy that we had this long offseason. We're already in week 3. It's crazy how fast time flies in general and how time flies in the sports universe. So not exactly, I mean, we got to keep it 100 here. It's not exactly the marquee Thursday night matchup. Like even last week was interesting. It's a division rivalry. Giants, Washington, at least it's people watched. It was a great game. It obviously came down to the last kick. Not necessarily this week, but hey, it's football. I ain't never going to complain when football's on, even if it's two teams that I don't think is going to make the playoffs. I'm still going to watch. So should be fun tonight. And with that is all the time we have for tonight's show. Be sure to catch Carving It Up tomorrow, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. If you've been listening to Carving It Up podcast, we appreciate that. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. So going to have a lot to talk about in the show tomorrow. Probably going to talk about tonight's game briefly, as well as my predictions for all of Sunday's NFL games, which should be fun without a question about it. Last comment here. Grady says the Panthers are better than the Saints. Frankly, I agree with you. I actually predicted the Panthers to have a better season than the Saints. So there you go. So Panthers are going the right direction, man. I'm telling you, I like them. I like their quarterback, Sam Darnold. I really like their head coach, Matt Rule. Like the hire from the start. So there you go. Should be an interesting game tonight. We got some really good games on Sunday that I will predict tomorrow. So again, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter. And be sure to follow all the Carving It Up social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So hope everybody has a great evening. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out.